The air in Palermo, Italy, smelled of salt and jasmine, but the alley behind Illinois Serpent smelled only of spilled wine and despair. Enzo Moretti, the silent, magnetic owner of the most upscale restaurant on the coast, and the undisputed head of the Moretti Syndicate, usually avoided the back alleys. Tonight, however, something drew him there. He was tall, just over 30, with sharp eyes and an expensive suit jacket unbuttoned, revealing dark, intricate tattoos that curled around his neck and disappeared beneath his shirt. He was looking for a clean getaway from a late, tense meeting when he saw her. She was tucked against the cold stone wall, hidden beneath the shadow of a giant trash bin, sobbing silently. She was young, maybe 22, with fair hair that looked dull in the moonlight and a dress that was torn slightly at the shoulder. She was crying with a deep, consuming pain. Enzo approached, his leather shoes silent on the wet stone. "Are you lost?" he asked, his voice smooth and low, carrying the hint of the Italian coast. She flinched, startled, wiping her face quickly. She looked up at him with wide, frightened eyes. She saw a handsome, dangerous stranger offering a hand. He saw the daughter of the man he killed 5 years ago. Enzo smiled, a cold, practiced mask of concern. "Come inside. It's not safe here." He knew her face. He knew her name. He knew exactly why she was here, and he knew that her presence was about to destroy the fragile peace he had built. Enzo Moretti didn't own Illinois Serpent, the Serpent, to serve pasta. He owned it because it was the perfect place to meet, to observe, and to control. It was built right on the water, with views of the Mediterranean, and it had a hidden, soundproof room for the meetings that truly mattered. Enzo was the youngest head of the Moretti Syndicate in 50 years. He was quick, ruthless, and he maintained a terrifying calm that kept his rivals, and his own men, in check. Tonight, he had just settled a dispute over a new shipping route, a meeting that involved more threats than wine. He was tired of the darkness. He wanted air. That's why he cut through the back alley, planning to walk to his secure underground parking spot. He saw the woman curled up, the tiny island of pain in the surrounding calm of the night. Enzo was usually untouchable, but the sight of her raw, unprotected grief made him pause. He was drawn to her not because she was beautiful, but because she seemed so utterly alone. "Are you lost?" he asked her. The girl looked up, her blue eyes swollen. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. "Please," she whispered, pulling her knees closer to her chest. "Just go." Enzo stepped closer, his shadow falling over her. "You shouldn't be here," he insisted. "This is not a street for young women alone. Did someone hurt you?" She shook her head quickly, too quickly. "No, I'm fine. She struggled to find the right words. "I just need a minute." Enzo studied her. He noticed the quality of her worn dress, the expensive watch she still wore despite its cracked face, and the desperate way she held a small, cheap duffel bag. She was running from something, and she was clearly not used to being poor or desperate. "You're not fine," Enzo countered simply. "And this is my restaurant. I insist you come in and have some water. Then you can go." As he spoke, Enzo's mind raced, not with concern, but with terrifying memory. 5 years ago, there was a man named Arthur Vance. He was a wealthy, American businessman who tried to steal a key financial ledger from the Moretti Syndicate. Arthur Vance paid with his life, a swift, brutal lesson Enzo ordered and oversaw. Arthur Vance had a family, a wife and a daughter, and the daughter's name was Serafina Vance. Enzo looked at the young woman crying behind the trash bin. He looked at the shape of her jaw, the specific shade of her hair, and the distinct, small crescent-shaped birthmark just behind her ear, which he had memorized from the files the syndicate keeps on its enemies. This was Serafina. She was supposed to be in New York, safe and unaware. She was the culmination of a buried secret. Her presence wasn't random. It was impossible. "I need to leave," Serafina insisted, pushing herself up with a shaky hand. "I can't go inside." Enzo knew he couldn't just let her walk away. If she was here, it meant she was hunting for the truth, hunting for revenge, or maybe worse, she was a decoy for someone else. Either way, she was a massive threat to his carefully built empire. If any of his rivals, especially the Calabrese family, found out the daughter of Arthur Vance was here and alive, they would use her to destroy him. Enzo immediately shifted his plan. He couldn't kill her. That would create too much noise and too much attention. He had to keep her close, keep her quiet, and find out what she knew. He had to help her. He reached out his hand again. This time, his grip was firm, non-negotiable. "Listen to me," Enzo said, forcing a genuine warmth into his voice that felt like a lie. "You look like you haven't eaten in days. I won't hurt you. I'm just a man who owns this place. My name is Enzo. Let me help you with your problem." Serafina hesitated, searching his face. He was magnetic, undeniably handsome, but something in his dark eyes felt predatory. Yet, she was too tired, too desperate, and too hungry to keep fighting. "I'm Mia," she lied, instinctively using a fake name. "I just need a place to stay tonight." Enzo's eyes flashed with silent acknowledgement of her lie. "Mia. Fine. Mia," Enzo repeated smoothly. "I have a small apartment above the restaurant that is empty. You can stay there tonight. You don't have to talk to me. You just have to be safe." He knew she was running from something. He knew exactly what she was running from: the poverty, the disgrace, the fear that followed her father's death. As he led her into the building, his tattooed hand resting lightly on her torn shoulder, he felt the chain of events begin. He wasn't just offering her shelter. He was trapping the biggest threat to his life in his own house. That simple lie and the boss's secret knowledge have just set the stage for an explosive story. If you want to see how Enzo handles this impossible situation and why Serafina, Mia, is really running, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Enzo led Serafina, Mia, through the quiet kitchen of Illinois Serpent. The late-night crew, busy scrubbing steel, instantly fell silent. They watched Enzo, the boss, holding the arm of the shaken, dirty girl. His men knew better than to ask questions. He took her upstairs to a small, stylish apartment that he usually kept empty for unexpected business guests. It was quiet, clean, and completely soundproof. "The bathroom is through there," Enzo said, pointing. "Take whatever you need from the closet. Clean clothes, a shower. Don't worry about anything tonight." Serafina was too tired to argue, too relieved to question his generosity. She was running on empty. "Thank you," she managed, her voice barely a breath. "I don't know why you're doing this." Enzo gave her a look that was part kindness, part calculation. "A quiet city like ours should be safe," he replied, giving her a simple, surface answer that hid a dangerous truth. "Go." As soon as the bathroom door closed, Enzo's mask dropped. He pulled out a sleek, black encrypted phone and called his most trusted man, Silvio. "She is here," Enzo said quietly in Italian, his voice sharp. "The girl. Serafina Vance." Silvio replied with surprise, asking how she got there. "She walked in," Enzo replied. "No. Wait. She applied to be a waitress here 2 weeks ago." Enzo immediately went to his hidden office downstairs, a dark room full of high-tech gear hidden behind a bookshelf. He pulled up the staff applications file. He found the photo attached to the application for Mia Rossi, the fake name she used. He looked at the face on the screen. It was Serafina. She had applied for a job here. Unbeknownst to her, Enzo had seen her application weeks ago. He had noticed the resemblance to her mother immediately and had ordered his people to do a background check, which revealed the application was fake and the girl was running. He has been quietly watching her for weeks, waiting for her next move. He knew she was living in a cheap hostel across town, burning through the last of her money. He knew she wasn't just lost. She was drawing closer to the place of her father's death. "She thinks life is spiraling," Enzo muttered to himself, looking at the simple resume she had filled out. "But I think she is the key to something I lost years ago." Enzo returned to the apartment. Serafina was asleep, curled up on the small sofa, wrapped in a blanket. She looked small and vulnerable. Enzo's kindness was pure strategy. He took her in for safety, but this was calculated. He needed her contained. If she was running from someone, or if she was unknowingly tracked by the police or his rivals, he needed to know immediately. He sent Silvio instructions, not to watch the streets, but to watch her. I want men on her 24/7 surveillance, Enzo ordered. Inside the apartment, use the hidden mics. Outside the restaurant, use the best eyes. If she steps outside that door, I want to know who is watching her, what she buys, and who she talks to. If anyone asks about her, they report to me first. Serafina didn't know the quiet apartment she thought was a safe haven was actually a prison. She didn't know she was being guarded to the point of obsession. Every move she made, every call she answered, if she had a phone, every tear she cried, it was all now reported directly to Enzo Moretti. Later that night, Enzo sat in his quiet office, drinking dark coffee and staring at the file photo of Serafina, Mia, side by side with an old, faded photograph he kept locked away. The faded photograph was of a woman who looked exactly like Serafina, but older, with a fierce look in her eyes. This was Isabella, the woman Enzo loved when he was young, before he took over the syndicate, before he became hardened. Isabella was the only thing he ever truly lost. The audience slowly discovers her face resembles someone from his past. Serafina wasn't just the daughter of the man he killed. She was the mirror image of the woman who left him because of the life he chose. That was the key to his obsession. He wasn't just protecting a secret. He was trying to hold onto a ghost. He felt a deep, terrifying guilt for killing her father, and an even deeper, desperate need to protect the face that reminded him of everything good he had let go of. He had to find out why Serafina, Mia, was here. Was she really looking for revenge, or was she just a victim pulled into the chaos by fate? Either way, he was not letting her go. Serafina, Mia, woke up in the quiet apartment feeling the safest she had been in weeks. The sheets were clean, and the air smelled fresh. She had spent the last few weeks sleeping in bus stations and cheap, smelly rooms. She knew she shouldn't trust the man named Enzo, but her body had given out. She found a set of simple, clean clothes in the closet, a plain white shirt and dark pants. Even the clothes felt expensive. She felt a deep guilt for taking his help, but the fear of being back on the street was greater. She walked out into the living space. Enzo was sitting at the small kitchen table, reading a foreign newspaper and drinking coffee. He looked completely different from the dangerous man in the alley. He looked calm and powerful. "Good morning, Mia," Enzo said, looking up. "There is coffee and fresh bread. Help yourself." Serafina sat down nervously. She ate quickly, knowing she couldn't afford to look weak. She knew the time for leaving was coming, but she had nowhere to go. "You said you had a problem," Enzo began, folding his newspaper precisely. "I assume it's more than just needing a place to sleep." Serafina stiffened. "It's just family trouble. I needed to get away from them for a while." She looked down at her plate, praying he wouldn't press her. Enzo's eyes were calm, but they felt like they were seeing right through her lie. "Family trouble rarely sends a young woman into a dark city with nothing but a torn bag," he countered gently. "Did you lose your wallet? Are you running from debt?" He was giving her easy options, hoping she would take one of them. She shook her head. "I didn't lose anything. I just needed to leave." Enzo leaned forward, his voice dropping to a persuasive, quiet level. "I'm the owner of this restaurant, Mia. I see a lot of people in trouble. I can help with almost anything: money, safety, a place to disappear. But I cannot help a ghost. If you want my protection, you have to tell me the truth." He was using his fake kindness to pull the truth from her, one simple lie at a time. Serafina felt the pressure closing in. She hated that she was attracted to his power, hated that he made her feel safe despite her better judgment. Later that morning, Enzo left for a meeting, telling her to stay put. "The city can be cruel," he warned her. "The apartment is safe. Do not leave." Serafina walked around the apartment. It was perfect, but it felt strangely cold. She went to the window to look at the street, but the glass was thick and tinted. She couldn't see out clearly, and she instinctively pulled back. She went to turn on a small lamp, but the switch felt strange. It clicked too loudly. She looked at the tiny speaker grill on the lamp base, feeling a cold rush of fear. She was an electrician's daughter. She knew how wires worked. She stared at the lamp, suddenly realizing she was being watched. The apartment wasn't a shelter. It was a gilded cage. She decided to test it. She walked to the small table and whispered, "I need to call my mother." 3 minutes later, a loyal Moretti man named Stefano, who she had never seen before, knocked quietly on the door. "Signor Moretti sent me," he said simply. "He says he is very sorry, but the landline phone here is broken, and there is no cell signal today. He insisted I bring you fresh water." Serafina took the water, thanking him with a frozen smile. She closed the door, her heart hammering. They didn't just hear her. They acted immediately to stop her from contacting anyone. She wasn't being protected. She was being guarded. Meanwhile, outside Illinois Serpent, the dangerous world Serafina was running from finally caught up. Enzo was in his office downstairs, reviewing surveillance footage, when Silvio burst in. "Signor Moretti," Silvio reported, his face grim. "There is a car. Not from around here. It has been driving slowly past the restaurant all morning. Twice." Enzo immediately went to the monitor. The footage showed a sleek, silver sedan with tinted windows, a professional, non-local car. The driver was hidden, but the car's movements were too calculated to be a tourist. "Zoom in on the license plate," Enzo ordered. The plate was from the north, from the territory of the Calabrese family, a fierce rival who would love nothing more than to find a secret weakness in the Moretti syndicate. "They are looking for something," Enzo stated, his eyes narrowing. "They are looking for a weakness, and they have circled my restaurant. They know something is here." Enzo realized that keeping Serafina, Mia, in his house was the right move. If she was out on the street, the Calabrese family would have snatched her already. His protection order had just saved her life, proving that the threat was not just in her past, but right here, right now. He had no choice but to keep her caged. The problem was, she was starting to figure it out. Serafina, Mia, sat in the silent apartment, the strange stillness now feeling like a heavy weight pressing down on her. The lamp, with its hidden speaker, seemed to watch her every move. She knew Enzo was dangerous, but she also knew the sleek, silver car outside was looking for her. She was trapped between two dangers. She looked at her torn dress shoulder and her battered bag. She wasn't running from family debt, as she told Enzo. She was running from a sudden, terrible discovery. 2 days ago, Serafina wasn't on the run yet. She was working a temporary job at a high-end shipping and logistics office down the coast. She was pretending to be Mia Rossi, just trying to earn enough money to live while she secretly searched for answers about her father's disappearance 5 years ago. The office was fancy, full of large maps and computer screens tracking ships. Serafina was just filing old papers, trying to stay invisible. In the middle of the afternoon, she was told to clean out an unused back room. The room was dark, and she was alone, pushing boxes around. Suddenly, she heard voices coming clearly from the ceiling ventilation shaft, voices that were loud and angry. She recognized one of them immediately. Her boss, the manager of the shipping company, a man named Mr. Gianna. Serafina froze, listening. She accidentally overheard something at her temp job earlier that day. Mr. Gianna was yelling into a phone. "I told you, the shipment is compromised. The police are sniffing around. I need the money to disappear now, or I'm telling them everything." Another man's voice, deep and calm, came through the vent. This voice had a distinct Italian accent, smooth but powerful. "You will tell them nothing, Gianna. You are part of the family now. You follow the chain of command, or you disappear." Serafina listened, her blood turning cold. The two men were talking about smuggling. But the next words were the ones that made her whole world shatter. "This is all because of that fool, Vance." Gianna yelled. "If you hadn't put the hit on him 5 years ago, none of this ledger trouble would have happened. I'm not going to jail because of your past mistakes, Enzo." Serafina stopped breathing. Vance. Her father's name. The man who ordered the hit, the murder, on her father was named Enzo. The deep, calm voice replied, "Silence. You never speak that name. The Vance incident is closed. Now follow the instructions I gave you, or I will close you." The line went dead. Serafina stumbled backward, knocking over a box. Her tears were not about heartbreak or debt. Her tears were not about heartbreak. They were about the terrifying, certain knowledge that she had just confirmed who murdered her father. She didn't wait to finish her shift. She didn't call the police. She ran. She grabbed her small bag and just ran toward the coast, hoping to disappear, hoping to get as far away as possible from the shipping company and the name Enzo. She ran for a whole day, terrified, hungry, and exhausted. She ended up behind a restaurant called Illinois Serpent. Serafina looked at the small lamp in Enzo's luxury apartment, the hidden speaker inside it watching her. She doesn't know the man comforting her is the same man she is terrified of. When the handsome stranger found her crying in the alley, she heard the name Enzo and only thought, that is a common name. She was too exhausted to make the connection. She saw a man named Enzo, who owned a local restaurant. The murderer she heard on the phone, the mafia boss, was surely a different, more terrifying man. Now, she was trapped in his house, accepting his expensive clothes, eating his bread, and sleeping in his bed. He was holding her close for safety, while she was running from the very man who was holding her. Serafina was completely alone. She was stuck between the Calabrese family circling outside and the dragon, Enzo Moretti, smiling at her from the inside. Serafina is trapped in the house of her father's killer, and is listening to her every move. What should Serafina, Mia, do next? A. Try to contact the police using a secret method, or B. Try to run away now, before the surveillance gets tighter. Let us know in the comments below. Serafina, Mia, knew she couldn't stay locked in the apartment. Enzo was listening to her every breath, but he was also her only shield against the Calabrese family's silver sedan circling the restaurant. She had to find a way to learn more about the Vance incident and Enzo's empire without leaving his direct sight. Her solution was simple: the job application she filed weeks ago. She approached Enzo early the next morning. "I can't just sit here," she stated, her voice firm. "I need to work. I already applied here under the name Mia Rossi. Hire me." Enzo looked at her, clearly surprised by her boldness. He saw the logic immediately. If she was working under his roof, she was under his direct control. He couldn't risk her trying to run. "Fine," he agreed, his eyes narrowed in calculation. "But you work the busiest shift, and you don't talk to anyone about anything personal. You answer only to me." Serafina accepted, hiding the small victory. She was no longer a prisoner, she was an infiltrator. The next day, Serafina started working the dinner shift at Illinois Serpent. The contrast between the luxurious dining room and the chaos of the kitchen was jarring. She had stepped right into a microdrama ecosystem. The staff immediately hated Mia. The jealous waitresses, Maria and Sofia, two veteran waitresses, were fiercely protective of their territory and their boss. They whispered about Serafina's sudden appearance and her strange, private connection to Enzo. They treated her like a rival for Enzo's attention, not a new co-worker. "Look at her," Maria hissed to Sofia. "Too clean for a waitress. She has eyes for the boss, that one." The suspicious lieutenant, Silvio, Enzo's most trusted lieutenant, ate dinner at the restaurant every night, his table positioned perfectly to watch the kitchen exit. He knew Enzo's secret, that Mia was Serafina Vance, and he watched her like a hawk. He didn't trust her. Every time she reached for a wine bottle or cleaned a table, Silvio was watching, ready for her to make a move. He saw her as a direct threat to the syndicate's stability. The secretive staff member. The only person who seemed kind was Luca, the quiet, older man who ran the dishwashing station. Luca kept to himself, never looked anyone in the eye, and always listened. He was always wiping the same spot on the counter, but Serafina noticed his movements were too deliberate. One night, she saw him subtly adjust a tiny camera lens hidden behind a spice jar on the counter. Luca wasn't just washing dishes, he was recording everything. Serafina realized Luca was a secretive kitchen staff member who knew too much, either a spy for Enzo or, worse, a spy for someone else. The ecosystem inside the restaurant was complicated, but the pressure from outside was growing. The Calabrese family wasn't giving up. The silver sedan from Chapter 3 had been replaced by two men sitting at an outdoor cafe across the street, nursing a single espresso for hours. They were professional and subtle, but Enzo's hidden surveillance network picked them up immediately. The rival mafia family who suddenly became interested in her wasn't looking for a waitress, They were looking for a weakness to exploit. One afternoon, Serafina was taking out the trash bags, the same spot where Enzo first found her. As she dropped the heavy bag, one of the men from the cafe walked into the alley. He smiled, a cold, empty gesture. "You're Mia, yes?" he asked, his accent harsh and northern. "You're new to Palermo." Serafina's heart hammered. She forced herself to remain calm. "I am. Is there a problem?" "No problem," the man said, stepping closer. "Just a warning. Enzo Moretti is a generous man, but he is also a snake. Snakes protect their nests. You should be careful who you trust, especially when you carry the kind of secrets you do." He didn't mention her father, or the name Vance, but the word secrets was a clear, direct threat. He wanted her to know that the Calabrese family knew she was important, and they wanted her to leave Enzo's protection. Serafina didn't flinch. "I don't know what you mean," she lied, her voice steady. "You will," the man promised, his smile widening. He dropped a small, folded piece of paper at her feet and walked away, melting back into the shadows of the street. Serafina waited until she was back inside the safety of the kitchen, under Luca's watchful eye, before opening the paper. The paper contained only 3 words, written in a harsh, block script: Vance. Ledger. Run. The Calabrese family knew who she was, why she was here, and that the man protecting her was the one she should be running from. The crumpled piece of paper felt like fire against Serafina's palm. Vance. Ledger. Run. The message, slipped to her by a Calabrese agent in the alley, confirmed everything. The rival mafia family knew her identity and knew she was running because of the ledger, the same financial record her father had died trying to protect 5 years ago. Now, Serafina wasn't just trapped between Enzo, her father's killer, and the hostile Calabrese family. She was the prized secret everyone wanted to expose. Her life had become a pawn in a game of deadly chess, and she knew she had to stop playing the victim. She had to become an active player. She pushed the note deep into the pocket of her plain black work trousers. She forced her breathing to slow, adopting a mask of weary professionalism as she walked back into the bustling kitchen. She couldn't afford to run, not now. Running meant dying alone in a back street. Staying meant risking everything, but it gave her a chance to find the ledger, the key to proving her father's innocence and, perhaps, the weakness that could shatter Enzo Moretti's reign. The simple truth was that the safest place in Palermo was right under the protection of the man she was sworn to destroy. She had to begin her double game. Serafina's first priority was to understand the extent of Enzo's surveillance. The apartment upstairs was a known cage, but she suspected the restaurant itself was wired. She focused on Luca, the silent, aging dishwasher who always polished the same spot on the counter near the spice rack. During the late-night cleanup, while the other waitresses were gossiping in the staff room, Serafina moved quietly. She deliberately dropped a small, heavy spoon behind Luca's station. As she knelt to retrieve it, pretending to fumble in the clutter, she felt along the back wall, close to the spice jar. Her fingers found the slick, cold, slightly raised circle of a hidden lens, barely the size of a pinprick. Luca was positioned to watch the entire kitchen floor, the chef station, and the main route to Enzo's back office. The discovery sent a tremor of ice through her veins. Enzo wasn't just using the lamps in the apartment. He had turned her workplace into another cell. She realized the constant, low-level static she heard in the kitchen wasn't just the ventilation. It was the sound of a massive, centralized listening network. She also understood why Luca never looked anyone in the eye. He was a silent, mechanical observer, not a person. To test the reach of the surveillance, Serafina began communicating only through subtle, non-verbal cues. When she needed something from the storeroom, she would tap her watch exactly 3 times before walking, seeing if Luca subtly adjusted his position. When she wanted to speak to another waitress without Enzo overhearing, she learned to use the chaotic noise of the blenders and the scraping of pots as cover, mouthing key words instead of speaking them. The effort was exhausting, requiring complete focus on her environment at all times, turning the simple act of serving a plate of pasta into a complex strategic maneuver. She was walking on a floor of glass, and she knew Enzo was watching for the first crack. The pressure from Silvio, Enzo's cold-eyed lieutenant, intensified daily. Silvio knew Serafina was a ghost, an anomaly that defied the syndicate's logic, and he saw her as a cancer growing inside the organization. He felt her presence threatened the stability Enzo had worked years to achieve. One afternoon, Silvio cornered Serafina in the walk-in refrigerator, the cold air amplifying the tension between them. He didn't shout. His voice was a low, dangerous whisper that chilled her more than the temperature. "You are a mistake, Mia," Silvio stated, his dark eyes never leaving hers. "The boss is distracted. The Calabrese are circling. You are the reason." Serafina feigned ignorance, adopting the wide-eyed helplessness of a woman out of her depth. "I don't know what you mean, Silvio. I'm just washing glasses." Silvio took a step closer, his breath clouding in the cold air. "Don't insult my intelligence. You arrived here with nothing, yet the boss put you above the restaurant, under constant guard. That is not charity. That is containment. People who are contained by Enzo usually end up dead, not serving his guests." He paused, letting the implication settle. "The boss is a good man, but he is still the dragon. And he makes terrible mistakes when his past whispers to him. He thinks he sees someone else when he looks at you. I will not let you destroy him because of a ghost." Silvio's words struck deep. He confirmed Enzo's internal motive, the dangerous resemblance to his lost love, Isabella. Silvio was telling her that her face was a weakness, and he would remove that weakness to protect his boss, regardless of Enzo's orders. This meant Serafina had a new enemy inside the compound, a loyal, ruthless man who was willing to commit betrayal for the sake of higher loyalty. Serafina knew her window of opportunity was closing. She needed access to Enzo's inner sanctum, his hidden office, to search for any record of the Vance ledger. Her chance came when Enzo ordered her to deliver his late-night coffee directly to his office every Tuesday after the rush. This Tuesday, she enacted her plan. She had watched the office door for days, noticing the sequence of the security light change when Enzo entered the code. As she walked down the quiet, carpeted hallway with the coffee tray, she focused her mind. She used a simple tool she had crafted in the apartment using a paperclip and a piece of wire taken from a broken lamp, a simple hook that could manipulate switches. When Enzo turned his back to enter the 6-digit code on the heavy metal door, Serafina moved with practiced speed. She placed the coffee down, then quickly slid the paperclip hook into the keyhole below the keypad. She didn't try to open the lock, she just manipulated the lock's internal mechanism to prevent it from fully sealing when the door closed again. The door clicked shut. Enzo, oblivious, took the coffee. "Wait outside, Mia. I will call you if I need anything." Serafina walked back down the hallway, her heart thundering, but she hadn't opened the door. She had only ensured it was not fully locked. This tiny window of opportunity was all she needed. She now had to wait for the perfect, short moment when Enzo would leave his office unattended. Enzo was not blind to Serafina's sudden change. Her eyes were no longer clouded by fear, they were focused, watchful, and intelligent. He noted her newfound calmness, the way she deftly avoided Silvio's stare, and her suspicious proficiency with the kitchen's broken appliances. Enzo noticed Serafina's sudden change in behavior. She was too composed for a girl running from family trouble. He realized he needed to control the narrative before she uncovered the truth, or worse, before the Calabrese managed to lure her away. He decided to use the ghost of Isabella to manipulate her. He summoned her to the apartment late that night, after her shift. He sat her down, the ambient noise of the surveillance feed quietly recording their every word. "You are good at your job, Mia," Enzo began, his voice surprisingly soft. "Too good. You are not a waitress. You are too smart." Serafina met his gaze, refusing to flinch. "I am trying to earn my keep, Enzo. I told you, I am just trying to survive." Enzo sighed, leaning back and rubbing the tattoos on his neck. He looked weary, vulnerable, a carefully constructed performance designed to lower her guard. "I need to tell you something about this place, and about myself," he confessed, adopting a tone of deep, regretful honesty. "This city is dangerous. It is full of history and ghosts. And you remind me of one of my ghosts." Serafina felt a tremor of fear, but she kept her face neutral. "I don't understand." Enzo reached into his pocket and pulled out the small, faded photograph of Isabella, the woman who looked exactly like Serafina. He placed it gently on the table between them. This was Isabella, Enzo explained, his eyes distant with practiced sorrow. We were in love. She was my light. She wanted me to leave this life, leave the syndicate. I couldn't. He paused for dramatic effect, allowing the simple, raw pain of the story to sink in. When I was 19, I was weak. I made a mistake. I killed a rival who threatened the whole family. It was messy, it was stupid, and it was wrong. Isabella saw what I did. She left that night. She ran away from me and this life, and I never saw her again. This was the strategic move. Enzo was confessing to a murder, but not her father's murder. He was confirming his darkness while simultaneously creating a manipulative parallel. I was betrayed by the life I chose, just like your family trouble. She looks exactly like you, Mia, Enzo said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. I have never seen a resemblance like it. When I look at you, I see the chance to protect the innocence I lost. I see the chance to save Isabella. He looked at Serafina with a look of intense, desperate sincerity. Enzo shared a partial, manipulative truth about his past to earn her trust. If you are running from something dark, Mia, tell me. I understand the darkness. Let me protect you, because I couldn't protect her. Don't lie to me. Don't run from me. The consequences here are too high. Serafina listened, analyzing every word. She saw the pain in his eyes, pain that was likely real, caused by the guilt of a past killing and the loss of his love. But she also saw the lie. He was confessing to a minor sin to hide a deadly one. He was trying to buy her loyalty with his heartbreak. She knew she had to play his game. She slowly reached across the table and placed her hand over the faded photograph, pretending to be moved by his vulnerability. I am so sorry, Enzo, Serafina said softly, her voice thick with practiced empathy. Thank you for telling me. It must have been hard. Maybe I can tell you my secret soon. But I need to trust you completely first. She returned his intense gaze with a look of fragile, growing trust. She had given him exactly what he wanted. A promise of future confession, binding her to his side, allowing her to stay in the cage, and giving her time to find the truth. Enzo smiled, satisfied. He had just ensured Serafina would stay close, unaware that she was now playing her own double game, using his confession as the key to his destruction. Serafina, Mia, moved with the stealth of a cat, waiting for the dead hour of the night. It was 3 a.m., and the city outside was quiet. Enzo was asleep in his secure penthouse across the complex, and the surveillance crew, Luca and his silent monitors, were on the drowsy, graveyard shift. This was her window. The door to Enzo's office, which she had subtly compromised hours earlier, was waiting. She crept down the stairs from the apartment, moving through the kitchen. Luca, the dishwasher, was gone, but the subtle, low hum of the surveillance system was a constant reminder of her danger. She reached the hallway. She paused, checking the door's handle. It wasn't locked, just the heavy weight of the steel keeping it closed. With a slow, agonizing pull, Serafina opened the door just wide enough to slip inside. The office was cool, dark, and smelled of leather and expensive cigars. The only light came from the scattered standby indicators on complex computer equipment. Serafina immediately went for the desk, pulling out drawers. She found documents, contracts, and detailed shipping manifests, but nothing about her father, Arthur Vance, and nothing about the ledger, the financial record that held the truth about the syndicate's smuggling operation and her father's innocence. Enzo's office was a fortress of organized crime. All financial records and critical information were digitized and encrypted on an external server she couldn't access. The physical drawers held only distraction. Frustrated, she moved to a large, locked safe hidden behind a painting of the Sicilian coastline. It was state-of-the-art. She was an electrician's daughter, not a safecracker. She was wasting time. Suddenly, a loud, clear sound ripped through the silence, the squeak of rubber soles on the kitchen tile. Serafina froze. Luca, or one of the patrol guards, was walking the perimeter. She had only seconds. She silently shut the desk drawer, slipped back through the gap in the door, and pushed it gently closed. The lock mechanism gave a heavy, satisfying clunk, fooling the system into thinking it had been sealed all along. She pressed herself against the wall, holding her breath as the squeaking shoes passed the end of the hallway and continued into the main dining room. She was safe, but the search had been a failure. Enzo kept his critical secrets digitally, not in paper files. She needed a new angle. While Serafina was risking her life to find a dead man's ledger, miles away in a remote villa overlooking the sea, Marco Calabrese, the head of the rival family, was meeting with his most trusted lieutenant. Marco was a man of intense, patient cruelty, and he was smiling, a rare, dangerous sight. "The girl is in the serpent's nest," Marco stated, swirling the wine in his glass. "It has been 2 weeks. Enzo has not killed her. He has not released her. He has given her a uniform and a bed. He is distracted." "But why keep her, boss?" the lieutenant asked. "She is the daughter of Arthur Vance. Killing her would be cleaner." Marco laughed, a low, wet sound. "Clean? No. We do not want clean. We want chaos. We want him to choose sentiment over stability. We want him to make the same mistake he made with Isabella." Marco leaned forward, his voice dropping in triumph. Serafina Vance was not just in the wrong place at the wrong time. She was deliberately placed in the boss's orbit by us as bait. The lieutenant was stunned. "But how? She came here alone, running." Marco explained his patient plan, years in the making. When Enzo killed Arthur Vance 5 years ago, Marco's agents had immediately tracked down Vance's remaining family, Serafina and her mother. Marco allowed the mother to die of a natural illness but ensured Serafina was raised in controlled poverty, watching her struggle. "We knew her father had tried to take the ledger," Marco continued. "We knew he hid the truth about Enzo's operation. We simply fed Serafina the right piece of information at the right time. We arranged for the little eavesdropping job at the shipping company." Marco had controlled the timing of the incriminating evidence being revealed through the air vent, the moment where she heard Enzo mentioned with Vance. "We gave her enough fear to make her run, but enough anger to make her stay in the city," Marco explained. "We knew the name Enzo would draw her to a restaurant where she thought she could be invisible. But we also knew Enzo's deepest weakness." Marco pulled out a thick file, sliding a photograph across the table. It was the same faded picture of Isabella that Enzo had shown Serafina. Enzo lost Isabella. She was his only true love, and she left because of the violence of the syndicate, Marco said. "Serafina is the perfect copy of Isabella. We knew he would see a chance at redemption in her face. He thinks he is protecting her. He thinks he is protecting the memory of Isabella." Marco confirmed the twist. Serafina was not just chasing a secret, she was the secret itself. She was an unknowing pawn in a war she does not understand, her resemblance being the crucial component of the manipulation. "She will not trust him, but she will stay close because she is searching for the ledger," Marco finished. "The closer she stays, the more distracted he becomes. The more distracted he becomes, the easier it is for me to take the shipping ports and choke his entire operation." Marco issued his next orders: tighten the net. Send a few more warnings to her at the restaurant. Subtle, printed notes. Make her believe she is discovering the truth on her own. Keep the fear high, but keep her inside Enzo's protection. Do not let her leave the compound. Back at Illinois Serpent, Serafina was trying to calm her racing heart. The failed search of Enzo's office had left her with nothing but higher stakes. She had risked exposure and gained no information. Just as she was about to retreat to the apartment, Enzo walked into the hallway. He had seen the office door light flash red on his private monitor, indicating a breach or attempted breach of the security code. He knew she had tried something. He didn't mention the door. He simply walked toward her, his tattooed hand reaching out slowly to touch the slight tear on the shoulder of her work shirt. "You look tired, Mia," Enzo said, his voice quiet. "Did you find what you were looking for?" The question wasn't a question. It was a veiled threat, a reminder that he was watching, always. Serafina forced herself to look him in the eye, pretending to be shaken by his closeness, rather than his knowledge. "I was just checking the fire exit, Enzo," she lied smoothly. "This old building is confusing." Enzo stepped closer, the air between them electric with unspoken tension, desire, and fatal mistrust. He knew she was lying. She knew he knew. But in that moment, Serafina felt a terrifying, confusing warmth in her chest. He wasn't just her father's killer. He was the one person protecting her from the true, unseen enemy. The deadly, forbidden attraction between them was growing, complicating her mission and threatening to expose the pawn to the chess master. She had to use this growing tension, this dangerous game of attraction, to buy more time and gain deeper access, before the net placed by Marco Calabrese closed around them both. The tension between Enzo and Serafina, Mia, was now a dangerous, humming constant. Their dynamic was a fragile mix of fear, forbidden attraction, and mutual espionage. Enzo was convinced he was controlling the bait. Serafina was convinced she was infiltrating the killer's lair. Both were utterly wrong about the true chess master, Marco Calabrese. The betrayal came from the inside, delivered by the most obvious suspect, Silvio, Enzo's cold-eyed lieutenant. Silvio saw Serafina not as a ghost of the past, but as a critical vulnerability in the Moretti syndicate. He knew Enzo was compromised, risking the family's entire operation over a woman who resembled his lost love, Isabella. Silvio decided to save the syndicate, even if it meant betraying his boss. Silvio used the simple fact that Enzo had given Serafina the keycard access to the staff elevator that led to the penthouse level, a gesture Enzo made to keep her close and under his direct view. On a busy Friday night, Silvio was waiting in the hallway outside Enzo's secret office. He watched as Serafina, after her shift, used her staff keycard to access the elevator. He waited 30 minutes, then made his move. He sent a quiet, encrypted text message, using a burner phone, to the head of the Moretti shipping operation. The ledger details are in the emergency safe, penthouse floor. The girl, Mia, knows the code. She is taking them tonight. The target of the betrayal wasn't Enzo, but Enzo's main rival within the syndicate, Riccardo, the aging head of the Moretti finance division. Riccardo had been plotting to take control of the syndicate's legitimate businesses for years. Silvio knew Riccardo would be terrified of the Vance ledger, the record Serafina was supposedly looking for, falling into the hands of the Calabrese family. Within minutes, Riccardo's men swarmed the service hallway leading to the penthouse elevator. They were heavily armed, moving with panic and purpose. Enzo, relaxing in his secure penthouse living room, received an immediate, frantic alarm on his main screen. Intrusion on the service level. His blood ran cold. He knew the only person who had access to that elevator was Serafina. He raced to the security monitors. The footage was clear, Riccardo's men, moving aggressively toward the penthouse, guns drawn. The entire floor was locked down, but the alarm had been triggered the moment Serafina used her keycard. Enzo's immediate, devastating conclusion was drawn not by logic, but by the pain of his past. Isabella had betrayed him. Now, Serafina has done the same. He felt the profound, wrenching certainty. He thinks she set him up. She used his false kindness and his weakness for her face to stage a security threat that would expose the division in his ranks. Enzo rushed down to the hallway just as Riccardo's men broke through the final service door. He found Serafina standing frozen, halfway up the stairs, caught in the chaos. "Enzo!" she screamed, terrified by the sudden appearance of armed men. "Get out!" Enzo roared, pulling his own weapon, facing both his rivals and the woman he thought had doomed him. "Riccardo, what is the meaning of this?" "The girl, Enzo!" Riccardo shouted back, pointing his weapon directly at Serafina. "She is taking the information. The Vance ledger." Serafina was utterly confused. "Ledger? What are they talking about?" She didn't have the ledger. She had failed to even open the safe. She didn't know that Silvio's message was a lie designed only to draw Riccardo out into the open. She realized the terrible, crushing truth: Enzo hadn't found her by accident. He hadn't confessed to a murder for her trust. His kindness, his vulnerability, his entire performance, it was all a massive, elaborate trap to keep her contained and silent. She thinks he has been lying to her from day one. And in a way, she was right. The scene was a devastating moment of mutual misunderstanding. Enzo was right that the situation was a setup and that Serafina was a central piece of the chaos. He was wrong that she was the one directing the betrayal. She was merely the unwitting trigger. Serafina was right that Enzo had been lying to her from day one about his identity and motives. She was wrong to believe the intrusion was a false alarm staged by Enzo to test her. The danger was terrifyingly real, orchestrated by Silvio. The shootout began, a chaotic explosion of sound and panic. Enzo fired over the heads of his men, trying to subdue them without bloodshed, focused only on getting to Serafina. "Run, Mia! Get out!" Enzo yelled, pushing her toward the nearest service exit. He still cared more about her safety than his own life, a sentiment that further confirmed Silvio's belief that Enzo was unfit to lead. Serafina ran, fueled by pure adrenaline and the crushing sense of betrayal. She thought Enzo was pushing her into an ambush, but she obeyed, escaping through the loading bay doors and back into the dark city streets. Enzo quickly subdued Ricardo's men and locked down the building, but the damage was done. The syndicate was in chaos, believing the dragon's head had been betrayed by his new, mysterious mistress. He raced back to the service exit where he had pushed Serafina. She was gone. He called Silvio, ignoring the chaos in the building. "Find her. Now. She is outside, unprotected." Silvio, hiding his triumphant smile, nodded. "Yes, boss. I'll get the teams on it." But Silvio had one last move. Instead of sending the search teams out to find Serafina, he sent them on a false trail far to the north. He then sent an anonymous tip to Marco Calabrese. "The bait is free. Dockside train station. Tonight." Enzo, oblivious to Silvio's true intentions, returned to his command center. The screens showed the city grid, empty and vast. Serafina Vance, the daughter of his victim, the mirror of his lost love, the unknowing pawn, had vanished. She had escaped his prison, but she had walked directly into the hands of the true enemy. Enzo Moretti was a king, and when a king loses his most valuable possession, the kingdom burns. After Serafina, Mia, vanished from the service exit, Enzo didn't stop to question Silvio's loyalty or the chaos Ricardo had caused. He focused every resource, every man, and every hidden camera on one task: finding the girl. Enzo tore the city apart. He didn't use the police. He used the vast, silent network of the Moretti syndicate. The search was a brutal demonstration of his power, intimidating every low-level criminal, every dock worker, and every street vendor in Palermo. The silver car from the Calabrese family was spotted leaving the dockside train station shortly after Serafina's disappearance. That single piece of evidence confirmed Enzo's worst fear. Marco Calabrese, his bitter rival, had her. Enzo hadn't just lost his asset. He had given the enemy the perfect weapon to destroy him. For 3 days, Enzo didn't sleep. He tracked every known Calabrese hideout, every safe house, and every shipping route. He knew Marco wouldn't kill her immediately. Marco needed her alive to serve a purpose. Enzo realized Serafina was bait again, but this time, the target was not his empire, it was his sanity. Finally, a desperate tip came from a terrified dock worker. He reported seeing a woman matching Serafina's description being held in an old, abandoned lighthouse north of the city, a known temporary holding spot for the Calabrese family. Enzo didn't wait for backup. He drove alone, armed, his speedboat cutting through the dark waves toward the isolated, looming tower. Enzo burst into the top floor of the lighthouse, the salty wind whipping through the broken windows. The room was dusty, cold, and empty, save for a single chair and Serafina, who was tied to it. Marco Calabrese was not there. This was just a final, cruel stage set up for Enzo. Serafina was sobbing, her body shaking uncontrollably. She wasn't tied tightly, she could have gotten free, but she seemed paralyzed by a grief far deeper than the fear of being kidnapped. Enzo rushed to her, cutting the simple rope bindings with a knife. "Serafina, are you hurt? Are you all right?" he asked, his voice rough with relief and exhaustion. He held her face in his hands. She looked up at him, her eyes red and streaming. But she wasn't crying because she was kidnapped. She was crying because of what Marco Calabrese had told her. They told me," she whispered, her voice choked with sorrow. "They didn't hurt me, Enzo. They just showed me." She pulled a single, small, faded photograph from the pocket of her dress, a photo Marco must have planted. It was a picture of a younger Isabella, the woman Enzo had loved and lost, smiling brightly. But in this photo, Isabella wasn't alone. She was holding a baby in her arms. Serafina's face crumbled. She looked at the photograph, then up at Enzo. "They told me Isabella didn't run because you killed someone," Serafina cried, the sound tearing through the silent tower. "She ran because she was pregnant. She ran to protect him from you and this life." She pointed to the baby in the photo, then back to Enzo. "That baby," Serafina whispered, her tears falling onto the photo, "that baby was my brother. Isabella was my mother." The revelation hit Enzo with the force of a tidal wave. He stumbled backward, his gun clattering onto the stone floor. He felt the blood drain from his face, the tattoos on his neck suddenly feeling like cold, constricting iron bands. She reveals a truth about her past that collides violently with his. Enzo looked at Serafina. She didn't just resemble Isabella, she was Isabella's daughter. Serafina wasn't the daughter of Arthur Vance. She was the stepdaughter of the man he killed. Arthur Vance had been protecting them, Isabella and the child. He was trying to steal the ledger to expose Enzo's smuggling and give Isabella and his stepson freedom from the syndicate's shadow. Enzo hadn't just killed a rival. He had murdered the man who was protecting the family of the woman he loved. The realization was a complete obliteration of his self-justification. Enzo had told Serafina, Mia, that he killed a rival out of weakness, which drove Isabella away. The real truth was exponentially worse. Isabella left him because he chose the mafia over the family they were meant to have together. She didn't just run from him. She found another man to protect his own son, and Enzo killed that man. Serafina looked at him, her heart broken not by the kidnapping, but by the shattering knowledge that the killer of her stepfather, the man who raised her, was also the failed love of her mother, and the indirect cause of her brother's disappearance. "My brother," Serafina sobbed, holding the photo tight. "Marco said he's still alive. He said he knows where he is. My little brother is out there, and he knows nothing about this world. I am crying because I need you to find him, Enzo. I need you to clean up the mess you made, or I will tell the world everything." Enzo stood over the gun on the floor, the truth a weight that crushed him. He was not a king, he was a monster. His empire meant nothing now. He had found the woman he loved and discovered he had been directly responsible for her family's complete destruction. Enzo has been stripped of his moral high ground and his emotional control. He must make a choice that sacrifices his identity as the mafia boss for the sake of Serafina and the innocent brother he never knew existed. Enzo stood over the gun, staring at the faded photograph of Isabella and the baby, his son. The truth was a physical weight, heavier than any crown or title. He was not just the killer of Arthur Vance. He was the destroyer of the family he had secretly yearned to reclaim. Serafina, Mia, was not just bait. She was the living consequence of his choices. Serafina's desperate plea echoed in the broken lighthouse. "I need you to find him, Enzo. I need you to clean up the mess you made." Enzo picked up the gun, but he didn't point it at himself or the door. He looked at Serafina, his eyes empty of the cold arrogance of the dragon's head, filled only with devastating clarity. Enzo didn't argue or try to justify his past actions. He accepted the monumental guilt. He knew that if he hunted for his son, Isabella's son, as the mafia boss, he would only drag the boy back into the same toxic life that killed Arthur Vance and pushed Isabella away. He made the choice instantly, a choice driven by pure, brutal self-hatred and a desperate need for true redemption. What he decides to do with that truth is the one thing no one expects. He looked at Serafina. "Marco Calabrese will use your brother to destroy me completely," Enzo stated, his voice calm, final. "He wants the ports. He wants the entire coastal operation." Serafina looked confused. "Then you'll fight him, you'll save your empire." Enzo shook his head slowly. "The empire is the problem, Serafina. It is the curse." He reached for his encrypted phone, the communication lifeline of the Moretti syndicate. He made 3 quick, devastating calls that would alter the history of Palermo crime. First, he called Silvio, the loyal lieutenant who had already betrayed him. "Silvio. I know what you did," Enzo said flatly. But I also know why. You were right. I am compromised. Enzo gave Silvio a series of swift, specific orders, detailing a financial and operational plan that sounded like a total surrender. He instructed Silvio to execute the plan immediately, without question, or he would expose Silvio's own secrets. The plan was this: Enzo transferred control of the entire coastal shipping and port operation, the core of the Moretti syndicate's power and wealth, directly to Marco Calabrese. Not his enemies expected the Dragon's Head to give up the very thing he fought for years to consolidate. Not his men expected this total surrender of the family's assets. Silvio, following the order, would execute the transfer, making Marco the wealthiest and most powerful syndicate head on the island overnight. Enzo hadn't given up his empire to his rival, he had simply given it away. He then made a final, brutal call to Riccardo, the head of finance, demanding a complete, untraceable transfer of all his personal liquid assets, millions of euros, into a secure, anonymous trust fund. By the time the sun began to rise over the lighthouse, Enzo Moretti was the leader of nothing. He was broke, without assets, without a title, and without a criminal empire. Enzo turned off his phone, ripping out the SIM card and crushing it under his heel. He was an outcast, a ghost, a dead man walking in the eyes of the mafia world. He walked over to Serafina, who watched him, jaw dropped in confusion. "Why? You gave him everything. You destroyed your life." Enzo looked at her, the dark circles under his eyes revealing the profound toll of the last 3 days. "My life was built on a lie, Serafina. I killed your stepfather, and I drove your mother away. The only way to clean the mess is to leave the life entirely." He reached into his pocket and placed the card for the anonymous trust fund in her hand. "This is everything I own. It is our starting point. We have money, but no power, no protection, and no name." He looked at her with a raw vulnerability she had never seen before. "We are going to find your brother. We will use this money to find him and to keep him safe from the world I just left." Not even her expected this. She expected him to rally his men, to fight Marco, or to choose the throne. Instead, he had chosen her, his guilt, and the pursuit of a life he never knew he had. "The syndicate is gone," Enzo said simply. "We are no longer enemies, Serafina. We are just two people looking for our family." Enzo, the magnetic, feared mafia boss, was now just a man named Enzo, embarking on a dangerous, penniless quest with the daughter of his victim, whom he now knew was the sister of his son. The hunt for the truth was over. The impossible journey for redemption had just begun. That was the final twist. Enzo has given up his entire empire for redemption, and now he is an exiled ghost, searching for his lost son with Serafina.